So WWE WrestleMania 37 is on the horizon, and we have some last minute changes to the card, some last minute changes to certain matches as well. One being the match involving rap sensation Bad Bunny and The Miz, because The Miz and John Morrison will now face off against Damian Priest and rapper Bad Bunny. It is now official for night one of WrestleMania 37. Now, of course, WWE had previously announced that The Miz versus Bad Bunny would happen in a singles match for WrestleMania, but it was recently reported that Priest and Morrison were not announced due to minor injuries. Now, that same report did note that the singles match may be changed to the original planned tag team match if Morrison and Priest were able to compete and overcome said injuries. Now, it looks like they have been cleared, as the change was confirmed during last night's Go Home edition of Monday Night Raw. The tag team match was the original plan going back to earlier this year. The angle that they did on the show to get to this tag team match saw The Miz and John Morrison use red paint to vandalize Bad Bunny's $3.6 million Bugatti that he and Priest drove to the venue in. Miz and Morrison later ambushed Bad Bunny as he checked out the damage, attacking him from behind. That led to Bad Bunny and Damian Priest hitting the ring and issuing a challenge for the tag team match at WrestleMania, which of course The Miz and John Morrison then interrupted on the big screen and accepted. Of course, WrestleMania 37 takes place this weekend, Saturday, April 10 and Sunday, April 11 from Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay, Florida. So there you go. It's the match I think we expected. I saw some reaction to this, and I'll let you know my thoughts on Raw as well while we're doing this, because let's be honest, oh my word. I mentioned yesterday when we were talking about Raw that I remember a point in time, and I don't know if I'm like showing my age at this point or whatever, but I remember a point in time where the go-home edition of Monday Night Raw, you got so excited. I mean, WrestleMania season, it was WrestleMania week. It was only mere days until the biggest show of the year. I remember WrestleMania 18, the go-home show, featured a main event on Monday Night Raw of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock versus the entire NWO, which is Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall. What a main event. Talk about getting hyped for WrestleMania. That was in Detroit. WrestleMania was in Toronto that year, and it was amazing. Last night's edition of Monday Night Raw was no different from any other Monday Night Raw, any other time of the year, which isn't a good thing at all. I mean, if Raw was good every day of the year, every week, or every time they do an episode throughout the year, I would be fine with that, but it wasn't. It was like any other episode of Raw, and that was not good. It certainly didn't feel big. It didn't feel like a go-home show. I understand that it was taped because they needed to get out of the Thunderdome at Tropicana Field. I understand the logistics of that, I really do. But in terms of a show, I mean, it was horrendous. It was not a good show, especially for a go-home episode of Monday Night Raw. And there have been some bad ones over the year, but it's difficult to say, like, it's bad. It's just boring. I think that's probably the problem. It's just boring. Not necessarily completely bad. You're just watching it going, this is just... It's just, if you were a casual fan, if you didn't have this loyalty that I think a lot of people have, if you didn't have this loyalty to professional wrestling, you would just go, it's just not worth the time. It's not worth the time. Now, when it comes to this match, the Bad Bunny match, I saw some people react to this going, well, looks like Bad Bunny's training isn't going very well, of course, because this looks like that, WWE, they're not sure about Bad Bunny's training. He's maybe not training that well and all that kind of stuff. And that just isn't the case. As I mentioned in the report has always been that the plan for this always was to be a tag team match. Frankly, when it was announced that it was going to be a singles match, when it was going to be Bad Bunny just versus The Miz, as a fan and knowing how these things work, I was slightly concerned, to be honest with that. I was slightly concerned because my thought process at the time was, man, The Miz has been in WWE for 15, 16 years at this point. He's been wrestling for like 20 years. He's a veteran and he's been in all kind of situations, but even... can The Miz pull that off in terms of a celebrity? We're not talking about like a Ronda Rousey or a Floyd Mayweather, someone that's got an athletic background. We're talking about a rapper. We're talking about a music star. And I don't know about Bad Bunny's background. I don't know if he did sports or anything like that. I don't know. That is a challenge. So that was my concern of, if they don't go with a tag team approach to this, that's going to be difficult. That is going to be very difficult. But the tag team option was always the option they wanted to go with. And I think it's the right move. So I'm glad to see that Morrison and Priest are on WrestleMania. Obviously, they deserve it. I think it would be really unfortunate if they weren't involved in the match. I think their payoffs would have probably been mostly the same if they were ringside, but you want to see them wrestle. As wrestlers that are there for all year. You want to see them get involved in that match. So that was, I'm glad to see that. In terms of the angle itself, you do wonder, like, who's the babyface and who's the heel here? Because I saw this reaction, and I do agree with it. I do agree with it that if I'm sitting at home and I'm watching this on my television screen and I see someone pull up in a vehicle that's worth $3.6 million, I know that some people do look at that, and I understand, look, this is, Bad Bunny's a rapper, that's kind of the rap deal, isn't it? Look at my possessions, look at my big car, look at my watch, look at my money, and all that kind of stuff. And I understand that some people look at that and think that's cool, a bit like the Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather have done that kind of stuff in terms of their self-promotion over the years of, look how much money I have, they carry around these stacks of cash. But to me, and this might just be me, maybe it's a point of bitterness, I don't know, but I see that and I just go, screw you, like, what? Carry around all your money, you don't have to shove your possessions down my throat, you don't have to shove your wealth down my throat. And when you see someone actually vandalize the car, you go, yeah, you shouldn't be flaunting it. I don't know. Maybe that's just a different viewpoint. I'm sure some people, and I'm sure a lot of people that are fans of Bad Bunny, because there are loads, obviously that's why he's involved with WrestleMania, I'm sure they would have said that and go, yeah, that's typical Bad Bunny, that's his style, that's all of this kind of stuff. Just for me, I saw that and I don't know how that is meant to endear one to the WWE Universe, apart from, I guess, looking at it going, that guy's cool, but for me, that's not the initial reaction there. The initial reaction isn't to be, how cool is that guy? It's sort of, surely the cool people are the ones that are vandalizing the vehicle. I mean, that's Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? That's Steve Austin did that to how many of Vince McMahon's cars, or The Rock's cars, or the Corvette, or whatever. I don't know. So I don't know if I necessarily agree totally with that angle. Now, speaking of changes that have been made to WrestleMania, or new matches that have been added to WrestleMania, we have a tag team Turmoil match that has been added to the show. WWE has confirmed that Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler will defend their WWE Women's Tag Team Championships at WrestleMania 37. It was announced during last night's Raw that Night 1 of WrestleMania will feature a 4-team tag team Turmoil match with Lana and Naomi versus Tamina Snuka and Natalya versus Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott versus Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. The winners will advance to Night 2 and challenge Jax and Baszler for the Tag Team Championships. Now, WWE teased last week on SmackDown that Carmella and Billie Kay will also get involved in the number 1 contenders match. Billie Kay did appear on last night's edition of Monday Night Raw in a backstage segment with the other tag teams, and noted that Carmella was reviewing her resume. Well, WWE might have actually jumped the gun when it comes to this, because when they posted the graphic on social media, it actually did involve none other than Billie Kay and Carmella. So it looks like Carmella and Billie Kay will be, of course, booked for WrestleMania 37. As I mentioned, WWE jumped the gun as they tweeted a graphic that had Carmella and Billie Kay featured with the other 4 teams. The tweet was quickly removed, but you can still see, there you go, that's the graphic there. So people obviously saw that very, very quickly. So it would appear that Billie Kay and Carmella are involved in that. And if they're involved in that, frankly, if that's the storyline going into that match, is Carmella and Billie Kay becoming a tag team, you would think that the storyline there is them not only winning the match, but also winning the tag team championships at WrestleMania. I think that's probably the direction they're going. Frankly, I'm never one, and I don't want to be massively hypocritical here because that's not right. I am one that is not a fan, historically, of just, you're a singles wrestler, you'd make a great team, let's put them together. I hate that. I think that just completely disregards any of the psychology or any of the logic that goes into tag team wrestling, of teams that have teamed together for a long time, or they've become proper tag teams, or they have matching ring gear or matching music, or they have double team moves. They use the psychology in tag team wrestling, which is completely different to singles wrestling. I'm not a fan of when WWE does that, and that's what they do. I mean, look at the tag teams in this match. I mean, there's only one tag team there realistically in the Riot Squad that have been tag team for a long period of time. I know that Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke at this point have teamed up for a while, but there again, these are all singles wrestlers that have been put together, apart from the Riot Squad, and they were a faction, and they have been a faction for a while. So it just goes to show, that's WWE's philosophy on tag team wrestling. Why do we need tag teams? We've got singles wrestlers. We can split them apart and put them back together again. That's how it works. So So I'm glad to see them get featured on the show. I absolutely am. I think if you're those people that have been booked for SmackDown, and we'll touch on the reason why when it comes to the rationale and reasoning behind SmackDown, because I have a report on that in a second. But those people that were obviously bumped off of WrestleMania for the SmackDown matches, whether it was the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal or the SmackDown Tag Team Championship match, they're going to be looking at that going, they get on the show, but we don't. And when you get to the reasoning in a second as to why WWE have justified this, you would certainly raise a few eyebrows, to say the least. But I'm glad to see Billie Kay and Carmella on the show, specifically Billie Kay, because she really has been a high point of SmackDown. She's been just such great entertainment value on that show. I mean, there really aren't many people in WWE that can pull off the bad comedy that they are given, because WWE back in the day, and I say back in the day, not the Attitude Era of like 98 and 99, I felt that their comedy then wasn't good, but WWE around like 2001, I think they had a really good, Brian Gewirtz massively, had a really good feel, like a really good feel for comedic timing. And that's why you had some of those great segments with The Rock, with Kurt Angle, with Edge and Christian, with Stone Cold Steve Austin. The comedy was good. I know people don't like it, but that's, for me, sort of peak good WWE comedy. And since then, every time they try and be funny, it just falls flatter than a fart in church. But Billie Kay, she has made the most of that entertainment on SmackDown, because she's incredibly entertaining. There was a period of that Royal Rumble back in January where it was just Billie Kay didn't even get in the match, but every time someone came out she'd hand out the resume. When Jillian Hall came out, it was just phenomenal stuff, really entertaining. And a lot of people were upset that she wasn't announced as one of the hosts of WrestleMania. People said, screw having Titus O'Neil and Hulk Hogan, why can't you have Titus O'Neil and Billie Kay? They're the people that are deserving for that role. And it's justified. They're not exactly wrong, are they? They're certainly not wrong. But it's good to see that Billie Kay is going to be on the show. And I think ultimately this cult following that she is building up, I think is going to lead her to becoming the one half of the Women's Tag Team Champions at WrestleMania, which is strange, obviously, considering she was part of a tag team. Talk about breaking up tag teams, splitting them up. She was part of one with Peyton Royce in the first place that didn't deserve or need to be split up at all. But remember, we have plans for Peyton Royce. That's why we're doing it. Vince McMahon has these big plans for Peyton Royce. You can almost see him. We have these big plans for Peyton Royce. And what has she done on Raw? Nothing. She delivered an unbelievable promo on Raw Talk the other day, basically saying, give me a chance, anyone. Is anyone listening? But she's done nothing. And it just goes to show, when they break these teams up, sometimes they don't even have plans. It's madness. It's absolute madness. Nevertheless, I'm glad to see that Billie Kay is going to be involved with WrestleMania. She deserves to be. Speaking of WrestleMania, I did mention that we have a bit of an explanation when it comes to some of the matches that were announced for the WrestleMania edition of SmackDown, because WWE reportedly moved the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal from the WrestleMania 37 main card to Friday's special WrestleMania edition of SmackDown on Fox in an attempt to shorten the big event on Saturday and Sunday evening. Now, as noted, WWE announced last week that the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal will take place on the go-home edition of SmackDown on Friday on Fox. It was reported on Wrestling Observer Radio that the match was moved because WWE does not want to have the show go more than 3.5 hours on the main shows. Now, the WrestleMania 37 kickoff pre-shows are starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday and Sunday, and are scheduled to go for just 1 hour, which is a change from recent years. WrestleMania main cards are scheduled to begin at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on night 1 and 2. As I mentioned, Friday SmackDown will also see SmackDown Tag Team Champions Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode defend their Tag Team Championships in a fatal four-way match against the Street Profits, Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio, and the Alpha Academy. This match was also rumored to take place at WrestleMania 2. So there you go. WWE has decided to move those matches to SmackDown on Friday to shorten WrestleMania. Now, I don't want to be hypocritical here, because I've been a big proponent of shortening WrestleMania. Some of those WrestleManias in recent years, prior to the pandemic, were outrageously long and had no need to be that long. And if anything, they hurt the shows. They really hurt the shows, because every single time, and this has been a problem since, I would say, about WrestleMania 30, I would say, since they started to go on the network, since they didn't have the problem of having to be off pay-per-view at a certain time. WrestleMania 30 was fine, but WrestleMania 31, again, I guess was fine. It was a long show, but it wasn't outrageously long. But certainly WrestleMania 32, WrestleMania 33, WrestleMania 34, and WrestleMania 35, those WrestleManias in recent years, by the time you got to the main event, you wouldn't even want to be in the main event, because the show is that long. To the point where you got to the main event, the crowd were tired, the viewers at home were just saying, please end because I want to go to sleep. Let alone people over here in the UK. I mean, honestly, we're talking like the show wouldn't end. You would have started watching at 10 p.m. and the show wouldn't have ended until 6 a.m. the following morning. I mean, that is incredible. So let alone for the people in the United States that are going to like 1 in the morning or something ridiculous like that. I mean, it was outrageous. And to the point that, as I mentioned, the main event matches wouldn't get a reaction because the crowds were just tired and the shows were too long. And it just became this great event, and this amazing event just became so difficult to watch because it was just too long. It was just too long. So I'm not massively against them wanting to shorten the shows. That's why I think that they should stick with the 2-day format coming out of next year. I don't know if that's the plan yet. They've just announced that WrestleMania 38 and 39 is going to take place on one date in Texas and in California. Hopefully they change that, but I thought that was the whole point of splitting it, is that you could actually have these shorter shows that were much easier to watch. Certainly last year, even with the difficulty of having no crowd and all that kind of stuff, having a 2-day event that was about 3 hours in length was so much better and more palatable to watch. So I'm not going to criticize that, but I don't know. I feel sorry. I really do sympathize and feel sorry for those that have been cut from WrestleMania, because it's the biggest show of the year anyway. It's the biggest payday of the year anyway. But also, we're talking about not performing in front of fans for 12 months. You would have had the opportunity to do that on a big stage in a stadium like WrestleMania, and it's not going to happen. And I do really sympathize for the talents there. It is unfortunate, but I guess that's how things go. But I will say, if we have any of these nights that go like 4 or 5 hours, then you're going to be saying, what? So if you're going to do that, just put the matches on there anyway, you know. So we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, if this leads to a shorter show, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't have a problem with that, because it just makes it for the viewer so much more watchable. So much more watchable. So again, don't have a problem with that in the slightest. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these changes and additions and removals from WrestleMania 37? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. As I mentioned, it's WrestleMania week, so we have a ton going on this week on the channel. We have watch-alongs for all the major events, live streams after the events. We have predictions, previews. There is going to be a watch-along tonight for the WWE Hall of Fame as well. So now is the best time to subscribe. So make sure you click the bottom right-hand corner, click the notification bell. You'll be notified every time we upload a new video or we go live for one of our watch-alongs or live streams. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.